Welcome back to another episode of Know Your Legacy. I'm your host, V, and today's guest is Tommy Baker. Tommy is the host of the podcast Resist Average Academy and the author of multiple books, the Unresolution Book, The Leap of Your Life, and his most recent book, The 1% Rule, all of which, by the way, have a 5-star rating on Amazon. He's also a writer and a speaker, and more importantly, a coach that helps you achieve your wildest dreams by reverse engineering it step by step. And Tommy, thank you so much for being there.
My man, just want to say thank you. Great to connect, and you're doing such great value with this podcast. So I already know I love your audience, and we're going to create some value here together.
Most definitely, bro. And just for those who are listening and don't know, we met at Thrive last year. So we've been friends for about six odd months now. And
Yes.
yeah, as soon as we started speaking to each other, we just clicked, man. So this is going to be an entertainment session because it's a catch up, but also we're going to provide some value as we get into Tommy's story, the stuff that he's learned, the wisdom that he's gained, and some of the stuff that, you know, he teaches the people that he helps reach the next level. So I guess the first thing I want to get into is Resist Average. How did you come up with the name? What does it mean for those who don't know?
It's a great question, man. And I came up with it now almost a decade ago. And the ethos of Resist Average is a mindset, because nobody wakes up and says, I want to be disconnected physically. Nobody wakes up and says, I want to be disconnected in my relationships, boyfriend, girlfriend, marriage, or with myself. Nobody wakes up and says, I want to be in a career where I drive to work every single day and my life force is sucked out of me. Right? We slide into that. We slide into that with small decisions compounded over time. So Resist Average is about flipping that script. And if we can slide into that, then we can also slide and create greatness. And that's what Resist Average is about.
That's amazing, man. I think, you know, I saw that you lived that ethos and that philosophy when I met you, because you were like, you know, always on top of it. Early, wherever the queue was, you're at the front. Getting to the sessions first, getting to the gym first, and I was there right behind, like right next to you. You know, like, I was like, this guy's everywhere. So no, it's good, man. Like I'm glad that we vibe on the same page. And when I found out that you had your podcast, I was intrigued because I wanted to find out, you know, how you got into it, because I've got my own story which I've shared with the audience, and I guess I want to put it to you. You know, what's the journey from where you were to eventually get into the podcast? Because I know that's more of a recent thing, and that's not something that you always had.
Absolutely. And you're so right in terms of our connection, and just for the audience, when you're in alignment with someone and you're both committed to the similar values and similar mindsets, you know instantly. And so like that's when you know. So latch onto those people and don't let them go, because they're going to support you on your journey, even if you're just starting out. So for me, the evolution was really getting to a place where I had created something that used to be very valuable to me, and that, let's just say, was my purpose, was my passion, was something that I was deeply interested in, which was physical training. So I launched a gym. I launched 2 gyms, and I was helping people create transformation through physicality. And it fulfilled me until it didn't fulfill me anymore. And this is the moment that we have to get honest. And what I found for me personally is that I was much more interested in why 2 people would come to my facility. One person would see undeniable life-changing success. The other person would stay stuck. Similar age, similar demographics, similar everything. And that's what I want to latch onto. So that's when I went into the rabbit hole of behavioral psychology, neuroscience, spirituality, business, entrepreneurship. Because I wanted to know those deep truths and principles of what truly creates change. And so I got to a place where I had to get honest. I looked 5 years down the line. I have this tool called reverse visualization, where you actually use worst case scenarios to visualize the life that you don't want and help make powerful decisions today. And I said, you know what? In 5 years, I'm going to be living in a city that I don't want to be in, which was East Coast New York. I'm going to be in a business that I don't want to be in. Even though I was still interested in it, I wasn't committed to it. And that's when I chose to cut the cord, rip the Band-Aid off, and set a vision and create a new vision for the future. And that's how I ended up, you know, being here and doing podcasts and writing books and moving cross country and meeting my fiance. And so all of that stuff.
How did you end up opening gyms? Is that something you always wanted to do? So did you always think in like school or college or wherever you were proceeding that oh, this is the direction I want to go in? Like, was that always clear to you?
I loved physicality, but I remember one day I made a decision. I said, I'm going to be a personal trainer, and I got the book. And then once I committed to that, I said, I just fell in love with the feeling of physicality, like those peak emotional states that you get when you've done a workout, you've been in nature, you've been outside. And so after I finished school, it was a no-brainer, and I jumped into it. But my family said, "Hey, you're gonna open up a gym? Like, really? Like, my friends were like, you're gonna do what? You're gonna do a gym?" Right? I was very young in my entrepreneurial career, but I had a lot of passion, a lot of ambition, and I stepped into it.
And how old were you at the time?
Let's see, that was 24.
Okay. How old are you now?
32.
Nice. You honestly don't look it though, because I don't think I asked you that before. So I didn't even know. Like all this time in my head, I was like, this guy looks good for his 20s.
I love it, man.
No. So for those, just to dig a bit deeper in terms of when you opened the gyms, from what I know about you, you had some level of success because you were already on your way to opening up multiple gyms. I know you had the vision of opening 25 gyms,
Yes.
but you didn't see it through. Why?
Because I had to get honest, man. I had to get honest. And so, I got to a place where, like I said, I was interested, but I didn't want to live in that space for the next decade. So I knew I could bring the 25 to life. The question is, what level of fulfillment would I had? Now, here's the deal. It's very hard to get honest. It's very easy to get honest when you hate your job, you hate your boss, you hate the office, you hate the coworkers. A lot of your life isn't working. But at that point, that specific point, a lot of my life was working. That's when it's even harder to get honest, because now you got something to lose. But that's when the introspection came in and said, you know what? I'm committed to a different path, and it's time to let this go. And it takes a lot of courage when you're in that place. But once you step into it, that's when the magic happens.
Well, what was the day when you decided like that was like a firm decision that this is getting uprooted. I'm gonna do a 360, and I'm fully committed to the change. And from the sounds of it, it sounds like it was all areas of your life. So the location, family, partner, the business, the income. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so that was New Year's Eve 2014. And so, it's New Year's Eve, people are celebrating. I had agreed to go to dinner, and I'm in this group, and I was there, but I wasn't there. And something in the back of my mind said, you need space. So I excused myself, and I just started walking aimlessly. And I found this open park. Now, mind you, this is East Coast. It's 13 degrees out. It's freezing, but I found this park. And that's when I lost it, man. Just like deep emotional tears. I said, this is not the place I'm supposed to be in, like literally and figuratively. Like, this is not the location I'm supposed to be in, but also this is the train track of life that I'm not supposed to be in. And that night, I just let it all out, and I created a vision. I pulled out my iPhone, clicked the record button on a voice note, looked up at the full moon, and I just set a vision, very specific, very detailed vision, where I was going to be, what I was going to be, who I was going to be, how I was going to feel. The only problem was I had no blueprint. I had no step-by-step process. We had just signed a 5-year lease. So we were on the hook for over $400K. I had 12 employees. Everything I had known was there. So this is the power of a committed decision. All you need to know is the what, the vivid what, have a vivid why. And in that case, I was very emotional. So I had a why that was deep in my heart. And then you just have to take that first step. And my first step that night was really, really simple, because it was almost midnight and I couldn't really do much. So all I did was grab my phone, leave the voice note, change the back of my phone. And I changed it because I wanted to come out west. So I changed it to an Arizona sunset. And I put that on the phone because I knew the next day when I woke up, when I turned on the phone, because we checked them 50 times a day, that I would see that again, and it wouldn't just be a lost memory. So that was the specific night. And that's when everything changed.
Well, and what did the conversations go like the next day? I'm sure like, you know, you had to have those conversations with those around you, like friends, family, your partner, especially the employees and the 5-year lease. I mean, how did you see that through it and make that transition?
Absolutely. Well, that's the messiness that happens after we commit to something. That's where people get lost in the how and the logistics of all of that. But what happens is when you make a bold declaration, a bold commitment, there are doors that will start to open that you didn't see prior. So in terms of my specific example, this wasn't really a sellable business that I ever thought I would be able to sell, because it had so much of my DNA into it. But after I made that commitment, just a few weeks later, without us putting anything out there, I had a group of 3 clients who said, hey, would you be interested in having a conversation? And that's when the magic starts to happen. And so for somebody listening out there, if you know there's something that you need to do, but you don't have the plans to bring it to life, don't wait until the plans bring it to life. Make the decision first, and then the plans will come to life. And so I had to have a lot of tough conversations, but I had already had the toughest conversation with guess who? Me. Because finally I had gotten honest, and I had given myself the audacity to dream big, but not just dream big, to make a decision on the back end of that belief.
So what was the dream? I mean, like, you know, that what you just said there, before we get into that next question, is, for me, it's very powerful, because one of my favorite quotes is, when you follow your bliss, doors will open where there were only walls. And you being a spiritual person, I know you've probably come across that and you vibe with Joseph Campbell's work, but like,
absolutely,
I've seen that to be true as well, because the way I see it is, when you're on this path, right, it's like fog. It's all fog. And when you take the first step, that's when you can see the step in front of you. That's all you need to see. You can't see the full street, and you don't need to see it, because you'll just get overwhelmed. And I know you've talked about that recently in your podcast as well. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Let me throw another Campbell quote back to you. If you can see every step of your path, it's not your path, right? So if you can see every step of your path, you know, hey, I'm going to go to college and then law school and then I'm married and get kids, very likely that it's not your path, right? And just like you said, if you can see every step of your bold vision, it tells me one of 2 things. It's either not yours, or you're not thinking big and bold enough, right? And so what you just said is so true. We just need to see, this is where we harness the faith and trust and resilience and the courage that we're going to need on our path. On those foggy nights, on those stormy nights where we can't see anything, all we have to do is, guess what? Trust that next step, just like you said. And that trust creates a rep, and it builds and it builds and it builds and it builds. And then we start to see a paradise that we didn't see there. But if we try to step into that paradise now without taking this step, we'll never, ever get there.
And like, you know, based on just what you've just said there, I mean, people who are listening right now might be thinking, oh, you know, it's all good for Tommy. It's all worked out now. Like, so he's looking back thinking, oh, you know, it worked out for a good reason. And those people who are, I guess, in on the fence state, you know, they're right in the middle of it. They don't know whether to go this way or that way, and they'd rather just stay in the middle because it's safer. And, you know, they don't know whether it's the right or wrong decision, and there is no guidance there. So can you talk to those people about how you ended up making that leap, because you could see all of the steps, and that's what scared you from what you were saying?
Absolutely. And that's where you have to me. So for this latest book, I went really deep into studying regret, where it comes from, how it feels, what the number 1 regrets of the dying are, all of that stuff. And so when I made that decision, and I use this, I call this reverse visualization. I use this tool all the time. It's like, okay, so you might be in a spot where you might even be comfortable, but you know you're meant for something greater, or you might be in a lot of pain and know that you don't like the circumstance, but still the unknown is 10 times scarier than staying the same. Like we'd rather stay in something that's painful, even though we know it, because it's predictable, and the ego likes predictability and likes to be safe, as you know. And then we have the unknown on the other side, right? So one of the best ways to make compelling decisions today, which is exactly what I used, was to take myself 5 years down the line and nothing has changed. right? The only thing that has changed is that things have gotten worse. And yes, the external circumstances have gotten worse, but the way that I feel about myself has gotten worse because we've all felt some type of regret. And usually regret doesn't come from the things that we did. It comes from the things that we didn't do, the missed opportunities, the conversation we didn't have, the time that we didn't launch the podcast, the time that we, stayed in that job for another 2 years when we knew it was time, or stayed in that relationship. And so for somebody out there, if you're on the fence, the reason that you're stuck is exactly because your mindset associated around the fence, meaning that on the other side of that fence there's an unknown land out there, right? And the moment that you can flip the script and instead of having fear about that unknown land, use that fear as a compass to step into it, because the fear wouldn't be there if there wasn't a gift for you on the other side. That's what I would have people focus on.
I love that. I love that, because especially the part you talked about when you thinking about regret, because that's a topic most people try to avoid because it is quite painful, but it's something that grounds you. And I think about it daily from the point of view of, imagine this was my last day. Would I be happy doing what I'm about to do, or the things I'm going to indulge myself in? And when you look back, you want to look back and think you had a hell of an adventure. Not, yes, I wish I did this or I wish I did that. And there's actually a book which, from the sounds of it, you've probably read. It's the Top 5 Regrets of the Dying.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, exactly. And one of them, for those who don't know, it's a book by an Australian nurse. And one of the top 5 regrets that she found out from the dying is that they lived a life that was expected of others and not true to them. And the reason I'm sticking on this point of your journey about the gym to the business that you now have, which we'll get into, is because when you're so firmly rooted in what you're doing and you feel like you're comfortable, and other people have put you in that box as well, like your parents, your partner, your employees, they're like, this is my boss, this is the guy that does workouts, this is the guy who owns a gym, like that's him. How do you then disassociate? Where do you get the courage to disassociate that, all those labels and those expectations, to then say, this is actually what I want? As stupid as it sounds, I'm going to move across the country and I'm going to start this new thing.
And it sounds very stupid and what you said is such a great reminder, because I was embarrassed to tell anyone about it, because I thought, because my identity, what you just said is great, because it's our identity piece, right? And when we have an identity, right, everybody around us, right, it perceives us from that identity, but so do we. So the question becomes is, who are we when we don't have that identity? This is why often change doesn't happen until a crisis moment, because we're so firmly grounded and we protect that identity with everything we got, that it isn't until the universe hits us sideways with a health scare, an accident, a divorce, a really, really bad breakup, getting fired unexpectedly, we're like, damn, I don't even, like that identity is, now that's I don't even know who that is, because I don't have that anymore. Who am I? What do I want? So we can get there through crisis, but we can also get there through spending the inner journey, which you've done, which is awesome, of what do we want? Where do we go? What is the possibility out there? And that's where mine came from, right? And to me, all transformation can come from both places, because during that time, I amplified the pain of staying the same, but I also looked out at another future that I wanted to create. And that's how I was able to step into it, by knowing, and I love that you mentioned it, embracing our mortality, which is a practice that I teach and I do every single day as well, in a very, very deep way, to make the decision today, right? Because tomorrow is not guaranteed, and one day and someday are likely never going to happen. And we're never going to feel ready. We're never going to feel like it's the right time, the right season, the right economy, the right president, the right prime minister, the right number of certifications. That's never going to happen. But the moment that we step into it, then we become ready.
Most definitely. See, the thing I've realized as well is from taking action, even if you don't know what it is, just the smallest step, that is actually creating momentum behind the scenes.
Yes.
in the direction of where you want to go. And you may not see it, and you may see it as failure because it's like, oh, I didn't get a response. They didn't respond to my email, or they rejected my application. Whatever it is that you're trying to achieve, that's the first step to actually getting to the end goal of where you're going, which is success for you. But you can't get there unless you walk through those quote unquote failures or those events, which is, you know, the way I like to see it is just another event, a stepping stone. It's heading in the same direction, same end goal. It's not a different path. It's just part of the same thing, which I keep stressing to people, you know? So what is your view on that? And how did you ever view failure as a negative or you know, as something that brought you down?
Well, I feel, and at the time I really felt like a complete failure with the gyms, because even though we had success, I didn't complete the mission that I wanted, which was over 25 locations, right? But just like you said, failure is all perception, because either way we get clarity. See, the worst part about being on the fence, as you know, man, is that we play a lot of games in our mind and we have no clarity. So even if we get off the fence and take an action and we fall on our face, we got some clarity, right? And just like you said, overcoming that resistance, the internal resistance that we all have all the time, every single day, that creates exactly what you said, that spark of momentum. So we could face the resistance, use courage, and get a no from somebody. But deep down, we're like, you know what? That actually felt really good. Let me do that again. Okay, that didn't work again. Now I have 2 data points that give me clarity. Okay, maybe the third time. And then the third time you're like, whoa, I didn't expect that type of result. And so it's all about the mindset that we're speaking of here. It's like the fence mindset is going to keep you in this box and then this lid where you and I are going to become private detectives for all of the reason it's not going to happen. We're going to stack so much evidence, like the best prosecutor on the planet. Evidence, 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 right? When the question we have to ask ourselves is that actually true? Is any of that evidence is actually true? And what you said is accurate, because when we take action, you start to get rid of the negative evidence and we start to create positive evidence.
Most definitely. I love that. So how did you decide that to move from New York to where you are now? And where are you now? Is it San Diego?
I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona. So I was in a flotation tank, in a sensory deprivation tank, and I just had a vision of coming out here. And the truth was that I needed space. Like you said, I'm definitely, spirituality is a big part of my life. And I needed a place where I needed an environment where I could feel inspired. And here's the takeaway for the audience. Your environment either becomes your catalyst for growth or your anchor for stagnation. And hey, New York's incredible for a lot of people. They go there, they get inspired. It was holding me back, and it was holding me back hard. And it was also putting me in burnout. I was in relationships that didn't serve me, all of that stuff. And so our environments play a big deal. The reason I'm doing this podcast episode an hour away from where I live. Why? Because I want to show up in this environment to give your audience value, to give you value, for us to co-create powerfully. I could do this in my pajamas at my home, but I would not show up with the same amount of power. So environment is so crucial. And so I knew that in order to fulfill the vision that I had created, which I'm in the process of uncovering and growing and stepping into every single day, I had to change my environment. And that was when I had a vision and a meditation tank here and back east. And I said, you know what? I'm going there. And I had come here for a seminar once, but didn't know anybody, had no plan, no social circle, had no idea, except I knew everything that I needed to know, which was it felt right.
How old were you when you moved here?
Well, that was I was 28. Okay. 28 or 29, something like that. Yeah.
And what was the vision? Like, how did you know it's Arizona? Like, was it written out in words, or like, did you see a picture that you associated with Arizona?
So, kept seeing the same sunset. So going back to the New Year's story. So, you know, when I put the sunset on the phone, and I declared that, I said 1 year. I said in 1 year, it's all going to happen. So fast forward 5 months and it happened. So that's the power of time shrinking when we make committed decisions. And so, kid you not, man. So I wrote about this in one of the books. 5 months in, move cross country, get here, and the first night, the first afternoon, I go for a hike, because hiking is a spiritual practice for me. And I'm going through the hike. It's just around sunset. I'm going up, going down, and I'm walking down. And I was kind of like really focused, present, but like looking down. And then I look up, and I'm like, oh man. And I look up, and it's this purple, hazy sunset with a cactus right in the middle. And I grab the phone, and I pull up the image. And dude, these purple sunsets don't happen every single night. I mean, they happen sporadically. They're very, very powerful. It's purple hue. Same exact hue. I pull up the phone. The phone matches the reality. And I just lost it right there. People were passing me. I'm in tears, dude.
I can imagine. That's crazy.
It's not, it's truth when you get to that place, when you see the vision before it comes true, and then it becomes true.
Yeah, that's crazy. Did you know what you were doing when you set the intention and pull up the image on your phone? Did you know like that this is something that's done, like the Think and Grow Rich type of practice, if you will?
It was just like a reminder, right? It was just like that. I wanted that reminder, but like I would never think in a million years that same picture would be recreated. But it became my compass. Now I have the 24-hour rule, which I share with people. When you have, so we're talking about a big leap here, right? Like a whole transition, life changing, right? But the same courage is required to make small changes as is big changes. So for somebody out there, when you have the moment of clarity, so that night on New Year's, I had the moment of clarity. You got to do something within 24 hours or you will lose it forever. It's just a fact, right? Or you'll diminish the enthusiasm, and then you'll start to buy into the reasons why you shouldn't do it, and then time will go by and that'll never happen. So like I said, the only thing that I could do that night, besides the voice note, besides all that stuff, I couldn't buy plane tickets. I mean, it wasn't reasonable to do any of that stuff. But I did that one thing. So for the audience out there, when you have clarity or breakthrough, and even a small one, 24-hour principle, do one thing that's associated with that breakthrough that's going to cement it as real, meaning it's going to get it out of your head and it's going to get it out into the senses, the external world that we can touch, feel, smell, et cetera, et cetera. That's how we honor our breakthroughs, and we're consistently creating the things that we want, because there's nothing worse than getting a breakthrough and then it just disappears into the ether.
Yeah, most definitely, man. It's just about creating the picture in your mind as clearly as you can, so that you know where you're going, because you can't hit a target that you can't see or you don't even know exists in the first place. So
exactly,
I love that you did that, and that's freaky in some sense, like the fact that it matched so vividly, like you had to be there the same day, the same time, like it's crazy.
It's beautifully freaky.
No, most definitely.
But you will notice synchronicities, and I know you have too, and the audience has. You will notice synchronicities come up in all different types when you commit, right?
You just have to be aware.
You got to keep your eyes open. That's the issue. If you don't keep your eyes open, you're going to miss a door that's going to open up for you and say, hey, come over here. I'm actually going to get you where you're going 3 times as fast, but you gotta make sure you see this door.
Yeah, most definitely. So you come to Arizona, you're 27, 28, I think you said. Where does the podcast come in, and then the books and all of that sort of stuff? Does that all start when you're in Arizona, or is this something that you already had like going on in the background when you were back in New York?
No, I started fresh because everything was in the domain of physicality. So physicality was always a spiritual quest for me. It was designed to answer one question: who am I when life gets difficult, right? And through that, a lot of the principles, a lot of the training that I had done was very applicable to what I'm doing now, but it was just in a different context. The great news is I was able during that time to really sharpen my skill set: speaking, communication, video, marketing, working with top 50 Fortune CEOs in the States. So I had the skill set, it was just in a different container. So another takeaway for the audience: don't ever neglect your skill set, even if the container isn't the one that you want. Meaning that you might be in a job that you hate right now, or doing something that you don't like. You can still build skills. Do not wait until you have the opportunity Otherwise, it's going to take much longer. So I said, you know what am I obsessed with? And it's human behavior and transformation, right? And what are the ways that I can take the stuff that I've already done in the physical world and teach them outside of that physical world? And that's when I started when I launched the podcast, and then I had been a writer already for years on different blogs and stuff like that. And that's when the book started to come to life. I had done so much training and coaching in the physical realm. And also, since my business was successful in fitness, entrepreneurs, business owners would reach out and say, dude, how did you do that? For example, we have a program that we would help business owners create, 90 days worth of revenue in just a couple of weeks with no new leads. So I would have people reach out wanting to replicate those results. So I had already been training and coaching entrepreneurs, but the podcast was really the launch point where I was able to put it all together and say, hey, this is what I'm about. This is what you're going to get when you come here. And this is who it's for.
I love that. So how did you build that up? Just to peel back the layers of someone, because you started off with no mentors, no real direction or no real help. How did you put all the pieces of the puzzle together to get the success that you did at that age for the gyms?
For the gyms or for the podcast?
For the gyms, before we get into the podcast, because I know from what you just said, some of those skills were transferable. So you already kind of had a solid foundation to then build on. Even though there was a knowledge gap, there was you were already on a certain level,
Totally. Yeah. For the gyms, it was I had a really big mentor, because I was already deep in personal development. But one of my mentors, Dr. Don DeMartini, he just helped kind of open up what I thought was possible. And so for years I went to his events, and this was before the gym, during the gym, and even after. And he just helped really unleash what's possible for me. So he had a course called Master Planning. You go there in January, you literally plan out your whole life. Dude, it is a 500-page document. It's the most intense thing you've ever seen. So I remember going there the first time, and I was, hey, what's your purpose? To train people? I mean, I had no idea, right? And you know what the crazy thing is, that I went every year after, and then that's when you start really expanding the capacity and threshold of your purpose. So if you're somebody out there who's listening and you feel overwhelmed with this question of purpose, understand that, just like we've said, first of all, it's going to be an evolution, and two, you discover and you expand your greatness as you continue to execute and step into the things that you're already curious and inspired about. So I just wanted to share that note because it's so crucial on purpose. But yeah, man, I was very interested in personal development and entrepreneurship before the gym. Obviously, once I launched the gym, I learned a really big lesson. If you build it, they will not come. That's when I really had to learn about marketing and client acquisition and all of that stuff. So that really built the foundation of business skills that I still use today.
What would you say was one of the most emotional parts of your journey so far, going to those seminars or those events, in terms of you realizing something and really hitting home, thinking, wow, I didn't even see that one coming?
Yeah, to me, there was that moment that I gave myself permission to actually have the audacity to dream extremely big. Because we often wait to give ourselves permission. So during one of those, we were all going around sharing what we thought was possible for us. And mine was really, really small. And I know at that moment, my perceived self-worth was matching my perceived possibility. But by putting myself in this environment, my self-worth exploded. And within that, my possibility exploded. So it was like a bookmark. It was like a clear before and after. And that's the power, as you know, of putting ourselves out there in front of mentors, experiential training, places that are just going to rip open what we believe is possible so we can step into who we really are.
Yeah, I think those, going to those events, seminars, etc., they're all catalysts to catapult you to the next level. But then you have to stay moving forward. Like, it's not going to catapult you forever. Like, you have to
Yes.
continue to take that action. So what happens when, because I know you've been through this personally, what happens when you go there, you come back and you're like, I'm still back to my shit life. Like, okay, that was good for a day, that was good for a week, or however long it was. You're pumped up, but then you're not around people who are pumping you up. You're not doing the thing that you talked about over there, or the dreams that you talked about over there. Now you're back here, back in your bedroom. What happens from there? Like, what did you do? How did you deal with that? And for those who are maybe in that situation now.
Absolutely. So, like I said, it's one thing to get breakthrough. What are you going to do with that breakthrough? We have insights all the time. Somebody who has lung cancer and goes to the doctor, their breakthrough, their insight is, guess what? You keep smoking, you're going to die in 3 years. But does that insight actually change their behavior? Doesn't, right? So we got to find something that changes. And the only thing that changes our behavior is behavior itself. So, dude, I've been exactly the where you're talking right now. I have known, because I went so deep into with DeMartini that I would, for 2 years in a row, I went to bed with the same audio every single night. And then I would wake up and I would transcribe like, I had more deep information, but then I looked around and like things weren't happening, right? And this is what I call the gap, right? The gap, the breakthrough gap to integration gap. And the way that you fill that gap is through integration. And so I actually created a whole audio training called the Integration Experience, which is designed to take your breakthroughs and reverse engineer to put them in to make sure that you're honoring those breakthroughs. Otherwise, what do you have? And to answer your question, it's all about alignment. It's all about alignment. And when I say alignment, I just think of like a very binary, you're in alignment or you're out of alignment, right? So you may have a breakthrough that you want to, let's just say you want to leave your current job, right? So you might have that breakthrough, you might have that insight, but let's take inventory of your life. Let's look at your habits. Let's look at your rituals. Let's look at the people around you. Let's look at the environments, the information, the media you're consuming, the food you're eating, the liquids you're drinking. I mean, we take this to the extreme. And let's say, is this in alignment with what I want? And so we know that the breakthrough is that, you want to leave your job. What do you actually want from that? Is this in alignment with that? And if it's not, guess what? You gotta eradicate, because it doesn't matter. It will leak your energy and your clarity and your belief in making it happen. And so what happens at these events is that we get massive dopamine hits. We get a lot of serotonin. We get the belief that it's possible for us, but then we go back to the same environment that reminds us of who we've been, right? And like I said earlier, environment, catalyst, or anchor. So we have to find a way to integrate the breakthrough to the person that we're becoming, not the person that we've been. A really great thing for this that I teach my people, and I've done myself, is when you get back from events or from when you have breakthroughs, every decision from there on out, don't make it from the person you've been, make it from the place of where you're going. So if I use this today, so one of my goals is to be New York Times bestseller, right? It's an outcome I've had since I was a child. I'm going to make it happen. I don't know when, but it's going to happen. So I make decisions based on that. So today, if I don't feel like writing, what am I going to do? I'm going to make it. What would the New York Times bestseller guy do? He's going to sit down and write, right? And so this is how we take breakthroughs and visions that we might have and actually put them into integration.
I love that, because you're already on your journey to doing that, just with that small example, because you've published books already, you've spoken already, you've already started working out, you've already moved across the country. Like you're doing the things that you see your future self doing. And yes, it comes back to that quote. I don't know if it's by someone famous or if it's just an Instagram quote, but do something that your future self will thank you for. And
love
that stays with me, because it's like, okay, what would he do? Just envision that guy or that girl looking back at you. And you can even do it standing in front of the mirror. It's just like, imagine that person looking back at you. Would they make the decision that you're about to make? And if they wouldn't, then ask them, well, what would you do? And just have the conversation with yourself. Because a lot of the insights I've had as silly as it may sound to other people who don't do this, is from self-talk, when I'm
Yes.
reflecting. And the clarity for me comes from just either writing, journaling, like just putting my thoughts and feelings and emotions out onto the paper and reorganizing it, or speaking, like walking around in my room and just speaking out loud. And some of the
Absolutely.
ideas they just come out, and I'm like, "Whoa, well, that was good. I'm just going to write it down," because you get into this flow state of just talking
Yes.
about a certain topic or a feeling, and you're just expressing it because you're doing it in an environment by yourself that you don't feel judged. Because if there are other people there, friends, your partner, whatever, you might hold back. And so doing it by yourself allows you to get real clarity. And that's something that I've done. I don't know if you do something similar, either on a daily basis or weekly basis.
Well, what you're talking about is, you know, we all need this what I call you time, this time in reflection and solitude, and time to really do the practices that you're talking about, whether that's journaling or affirmations or speaking stuff, right? In a safe space, in a container that is safe and full of possibility, right? To bring those to life. So the practices that you mentioned, I mean, to me, I always tell people, put yourself in environments and spaces and behaviors that are designed to inspire and empower you. So I know for me, one of the reasons I moved out to Arizona is because nature is my access point to possibility, right? And so it didn't work for me to be in New York for 6 months and not be able to access nature at the level that I wanted, right? There was no amount of other journaling, meditation, stuff that I could do because that's not my best access point, right? So we got to discover what our access point is to achieve the breakthrough the inner breakthrough that we're talking about, because we can get breakthrough from events. That's great. But what you're talking about is deep wisdom. It's the wisdom we already have, the stuff that we already know, the answers that we already know, but we very rarely tap into them because there's no protected space to bring them out because we're so distracted, right? So find your access point, or find your rituals that bring you to that access point, like you did, and protect that with everything you got. So just for example, for me, obviously my mornings are untouchable. Nobody can touch them, non-negotiable. And I have 2 parts of my day that are just blocks of space that nobody can touch. My assistant can't touch. No, I'm not going to podcast. I'm not going to do videos during that time. It's me time. And hey, one day that might be journaling. One day that might be a hike. One day that might be reading. One day that might be going to the bookstore and just losing myself and stuff. It doesn't matter what it is. It's tapping into that inner wisdom at least once a day.
Yeah, most definitely. I found the power in just taking time for yourself, for self-reflection, whether that's, 10 minutes, 15, 20, half an hour, 1 hour. You do what you can with where you are now in your situation. Then you can expand that, change that, evolve that as you move forward, and, you're evolving your character. And your circumstances change. So take small actions, small steps where you are. It's the small wins from everyone that I've spoken to. That's what they've said. It's the small wins that build the momentum of confidence that allow you to have those big breakthroughs later on, because then you're ready. Your character's ready for those big breakthroughs.
Exactly.
So where did the process of the books come from in terms of the first, second, and then the most recent, the 1%? Like, where were you in your life at the time that you wrote each of those?
Yeah, definitely. So I have been a writer even when I had the gyms, even before that. So I've been writing every day consistently for about 7 years now. So that could be blog content or anything really, journaling stuff. But the first one is called Unresolution, and it came out. I heard so many people, including myself, say, "Hey, next year," and this one was, when I was doing the gyms, this was the one I would hear, "Hey, next year I'm going to get in shape. Next year, right?" So I really wanted to eradicate that mindset that if we go from a 7 to an 8 on a calendar digit, we're actually going to change, because we all know how that ends out. So that was that one, and then I actually followed. So the second one is the 1%. So that's the one that came out last year, and that one was based on, hey, so we placed a lot of pressure on ourselves for success, and we want the big breakthrough. We want to, just like you said, we want to just crush everything tomorrow. We have the insight from the event, and now, hey, 3 months later, we want to be in this place. Not saying that's not possible. It places a lot of tremendous pressure on ourselves, and the universe doesn't really respond to our man-made pressure. It just doesn't. There's something called divine timing, and sometimes it's And no, and it is often out of our control. We can control what we can, which is our small daily action steps. And that's why I wrote the 1% rule, because too many of us are trying to own our 5-year plan today. And that's a lot of pressure. If I want to own my 5-year plan today, well, I hope I have more than 24 hours. But if I can just own today, if I can win the day, whatever that means to me, right? And I have baselines for that, and I can win tomorrow. When I look back at a year, it's incredible. When you look back 3 years, your life can be utterly unrecognizable. And that's why I created the 1% rule. And then my new one, which is coming out, is more about taking that bold decision. What's it gonna, how do you identify that bold decision? How do you know it's right for you? But then how do you navigate what happens after? Because there's a misconception that when you step into the bold decision, everything's going to be amazing. And it's not. You're going to be living in duality. You're going to be living in constant fear and self-doubt, and you're going to be constant enthusiasm and inspiration. So how do we navigate what I call the messy middle, right? To make sure that we last long enough to bring that to life.
Did you self-publish, or did you go down the route of getting a publishing house behind you? Like, how did you make that decision? Because I know people have, they go either way based on, what's best for them.
Yeah, and I think both are great options. I did, first 2 are self-published, and this next one I am working with a traditional publisher in New York. So it's a different experience, but they're both great depending on what you're looking to create. But that's the key word: create.
Yeah,
create, and the rest will happen.
Yeah, exactly. So with the podcast then, from all the individuals that you've spoken to so far, who's really stuck with you in terms of like the lessons that you've learned?
Wow, that's a loaded question, man. Because I'm sure, like you, I feel so blessed that every single week, sometimes I'll finish an episode and I'll say, did that really just happen? I mean, like, I would be so fulfilled just having that conversation, with the fact that other people can tune into it. But, some of the biggest recently, Dr. Joe Dispenza was a really big one, just because I've followed his work for a long time and I really love what he does. One of my mentors, Lisa Nichols, who really inspired me for parts of the book. That was also a really big one. Yeah, those 2 really, really stand out. But much like you, it's amazing to be able to have these enlightening conversations. And what we do, much like on this show on the Academy, is that, I want to find your moments of challenge. I want to find your moments of adversity, because it's so easy to look back and you said it earlier, but look back and, take our path, our hero's journey, that's going to have a lot of lights, a lot of dark, a lot of rainy days, a lot of questioning, a lot of beautiful paradises, but that's the riveting journey. But it's easy to look back and, we both go to Thrive. So it's very easy to do a speech at Thrive, to hear a speech at Thrive and have a whole decade of that journey packaged really neatly. What I love about conversations like this is that we get to go deep into the trenches about the challenges of the journey. And that's not disempowering, that's actually empowering. Because then when we hit adversity, when we hit a challenge, we say, hey, this is part of the journey and this is going to make me better. And most importantly, I'm going to look back and say, remember that time that I launched the webinar and 2 people showed up? Remember that time that I launched the book and nobody read it? Remember the time that I put my message out to the world, or I started the app or whatever it is, and nobody got it? And it's like, that makes the journey that much sweeter.
I completely vibe with you there, because I took screenshots of where the podcast was last year in terms of the subscribers that I had, the ratings that I had, and I still look back to it today, and I just say, like, it starts with 1. Like, everything starts with 1, like 1 subscriber, 1 like, 1 comment, whatever it is. And I was just thinking, like, now there's hundreds or thousands of people behind it, and it's crazy, because then your gratitude in the journey is what keeps you grounded, because you're like, that's like, I built this, like, from just taking 1 step at a time, and now a year and a half's passed, or just under a year for me anyway. And it's like, you wouldn't imagine that you'd be where you are right now in terms of the people that we get to speak to on a week-to-week basis. And you look back and you think, the guy back then, a year ago, the me from a year ago, all he wanted to do was to take action. I didn't know that February 2019, I'd be having this conversation with Tommy, or the conversation with the head of marketing at K-Swiss last week. It's just that all of that, because I didn't even know these people existed. I didn't know you existed. I didn't know he existed. When I started with the intention of putting out value and positivity into the world in the best container that I knew, which was podcasting, from what my mentors said. And that was it. You know, the guests came as I started moving on and on and on and on. And I'm sure it's the same with you, because some of the names that you just name dropped there, they're not people that, you know, you can just email and get in touch with straight away. It takes a bit of work and relationship building, you know?
And what you said is beautiful, because you had the courage to create, right? Because you had the courage to create. It's because everybody has the insight to leave the job, to start the podcast, to do the thing, but you actually had the courage to step into it, right? Then the doors open that you didn't see. You couldn't see them because you hadn't stepped into it. So stepping into our courage is a prerequisite. It's the ticket to get into the arena, and in the arena is when the doors will open, right? But too often we're waiting for proof for the doors to open before we've actually stepped into our courage. And that's what I want to remind people of. It will take your courage, and that's when faith and trust and resilience are created. But if you're waiting for that sign, for that door to open beforehand, for you to have the head of marketing reach out before you do the podcast, it's not going to happen. So that's the power of it. And now, you know, when I walk into bookstores these days, when I walk into events, I'm like, oh yeah, talked to them last week. Oh yeah, I talked to that person a couple weeks ago. And it's awesome, because me, same thing, 3 years ago, when I walked in a bookstore, guess what? None of them are people I had talked to. Maybe one out of like in a blue moon. But now it's like, hey, I feel I'm connected to that. That's all. I just texted that person. And that's the power of the courage to create and put yourself out there. And that might be the courage to, you know, create a blog, or to create a podcast, or to create an app, or to create a personal training business, or a consulting business, or your spiritual business, or whatever it may be. Put yourself out there and the doors will open.
What would you say, from all of the ups and downs you've been through so far, has been your darkest day and your brightest day so far?
I love that. Well, the darkest day was the moment that I walked into my facility for the last time, and I went into my office and none of my stuff was there, because it was a reminder that my identity was forever changing. So that was, you know, and it's crazy because you asked what's the darkest and what's the light, and I know you're you're super spiritual too, and you know, it's almost like that moment could also be the lightest moment too, you know, which is so crazy, because I was going to say something else for the light moment, but I think within the darkness, within those breakdowns, when we dissolve the ego, when we shift our identity, inherently there's a light in there if we're willing to sit with the darkness deep enough. So that would be like the darkness, and it could be the light too. And in terms of the lightest day, and this sounds so cliche, man, but when you're living it, and I know you resonate with this, honestly feel like every single day is a light day, because I wasn't always on purpose. I wasn't always connected with where I was going. I didn't always have the belief that it was possible for me. I didn't have the belief that I was worthy. I didn't have the belief that I was capable. And so when you operate out of lack of those things for a long time, which I did even before the fitness business, and then now it's part of your daily experience, that is light. And for somebody out there listening, if you're in the first place that I described, just know that your current circumstances and current conditions are not who you are. And what really scares you, and I know you think it's failing that's going to scare you, it's not going to scare you. It's the potential on what's the other side. Because to get to that place, just like we discussed, it's going to take a tremendous amount of courage. But you already have it. And when you step into it, I guarantee your days will be full of light.
I love that, and I would have given a similar answer if I was asked the same thing. We tend to see things in a very on a deeper level. You know,
Yes.
you see past the veil, and like you're able to analyze things on a much deeper level. So on that front as well, I wanted to ask you, like, were you always quite spiritual, or was there a time where you felt like something turned and went 360, and then you were pushed in that direction slowly? Because I know for me, without getting into it too much, it's like it happened around the age of like 2021, about 5 or so years ago. That's when I really started, just like the information came out of nowhere. Just started reading, learning, listening, researching, and I was like, I didn't study any of this stuff before. Where are all these ideas coming from? Where's all this curiosity coming from? Like, and since then it's nonstop, just books, seminars, podcasts, just basically on a journey of figuring out and uncovering who I am, layer by layer, day by day, just step by step. And that's a game in itself, and that's what life ends up becoming. That's what it's become for me. It's like, what else is possible? What else is possible? Just competing with myself every day, mentally, physically, spiritually, whatever it might be, to see what else can I do without focusing on others. And it happened. We spoke about this at Thrive. It happened because of the whilst I was going through the health situation with the gut and the skin, and just the whole mess that happened. And
Yes.
that's when I was thrown in a completely different direction, because I didn't pursue what I studied at college or university at the time. So for you, was there any standout moment where you think, oh, when I reflect back, I always think of that thing?
Yeah, definitely. I remember I was definitely young, 2021. But I signed up for this Buddhist meditation retreat, and it was like on the outskirts of New York, like in the country. And I went there, and everybody's 55, 60, 65. It's a 2-day deal, and we're going around and we're sharing, like, why we're here. And honestly, I didn't really know. I just kind of, like you, just the questions, like, who am I? Why am I here? Like, I needed to answer those. And so that was like just the first thing that appeared when you asked those questions. And we start going around, and the man in front of me, I go, and then the man in front of me turns around and he looks at me really like deadpan in the eye, and he says, he was probably like 70 or something. He said, "Son, the things that I would give up to be in your position right now, don't let this go." Something to that effect. That changed me, because the depth of his words at that young age, like, I could tell it was one of those anchoring moments. So once I felt that, and obviously I had a great experience at the Buddhist thing, but once I felt him coming back with that advice, that wisdom of his age, I said, you know what, I'm going to go so deep into this journey. I don't know where it's going to take me. I have no idea where it's going to go. But I'm not going to let this be a one-time thing. And that's when things really started to open up, and deeply on the spiritual side. Because I believe so often, especially in what we do, business is like the conversation, and there's so many mindsets and principles of business that are powerful, but really the foundational piece of everything is discovering who we really are. I work with so many entrepreneurs that think that they need that next marketing plan. And is there time for tactics and strategies in marketing? Of course there is. But the hardest part of entrepreneurship is the emotional journey. And if you don't have a foundation on who you are, you will be broken by the storms, right? Everybody wants to build a home theater on a penthouse before they want to build the soil and the foundation. And what I mean by that is that get to know who you are, get to know your dark corners, get to know the places that you're emotionally triggered and pushed to the edge with, because then life becomes really, really easy. Then the other parts of life become really easy, because all change is emotional, all transformation is emotional, and if you can deal with that, you will be in a place of navigating change, like that's going to serve you for as long as you're in this game, and that's a beautiful ride.
Yeah, I love that, man. It's a personal journey, to say the least, and it's going to be different for everyone. But I just hope that people, start asking questions, because for me that's been the basis of everything I've been able to do so far, and the things that I hope to accomplish is constantly question what else is possible. And again, I think that comes back to just having the inner feeling of resisting average. It's like, I don't want to stay where I am. I'm happy that I got here. I'm grateful, but I'm not satisfied. I want to, what else? while being grounded is what eventually allows you to have, I guess, the fulfillment as you're going through the process. And that's the most important thing is falling in love with the process, because there isn't anything else. Like we're all heading in the same direction. And you being a spiritual person, I know you'll like this quote. I saw a quote by a Indian priest. I can't remember his exact name, but he said, in the end, we're just all walking each other home. And
I love that.
And that's why we should just like spread positivity and help as much as we can as we're going. Because to me, the way I see giving is just like little deposits of positivity wherever you go. And as I'm going along my journey, that's all going to come back to me in some shape or form, whatever that might be in the time that I need it most, you know? So if we're all heading in that direction, why don't you just make it fun for everyone that you touch along the way?
I love that, man. That is so powerful and such a great reminder.
So just to wrap this up with the final few questions, then, I know from everything that you said, you've been through, you know, a whirlwind of a journey, but if there was anything that you could pass on to an 18-year-old, you know, looking to you for some guidance and help, is there anything you would tell him or her in terms of foundational, you know, lessons that they can implement at their age?
100%. It would be unequivocally to turn the phone off and get to spend some time with yourself. Because when you don't know who you are, just said, when you don't know who you are, life will beat you down. And the truth is, we never know where the adversity or challenges are going to come. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. But when you know who you are, those challenges actually make you stronger. They build your purpose. They build your character and your resilience for you to step into a much more powerful version of yourself. Or they can crumble you. The question is which you're going to choose. For somebody out there at that age, you're not going to find the answers in the phone. You're not going to find the answers in entertainment. You're not going to find the answers on your friend's Instagram account. You're going to find the answers by turning the phone off and spending some time with yourself. And I know that's the least sexy thing you could ever, the least sexy advice on the planet. But that's what I wish I would have been told, because that's what I needed to hear.
Yeah, it's a good message, because I think, you know, just looking at it from a personal perspective, when you understand who you are, then you can understand what you're capable of. If you don't even understand the machine that you're using, or the machine that you're driving through this journey and what it's capable of, then your decisions will be coming through a distorted lens. You'll be making decisions based on negative or limited beliefs or patterns, without realizing what's actually possible, because then everything, you know, opens up in a way that you never even imagined. So I love that. And if there was one statement that you would leave the world with, what would it be?
Ooh, spicy. You already have everything you will ever need.
Based on everything.
Go. Like, you should have started now. Yeah, like now. Like 2 seconds ago, you should have started, but go right now. You don't have to wait any longer. It's the perfect time when you choose it to be.
I love it. Yeah.
I could have a thousand messages.
You struggle to keep your mouth shut there.
I'm a rambler, man. Once I get empowered, when I get in energetic spaces with people who, you know, empower me, I can't stop, dude.
Yeah, I know. I got sniffing. I was sniffing of that when we spoke last year. I'm exactly the same way. It's going for hours and hours and hours. But the last question, with everything you've gone through and all the crazy adventures you're going to be going on in the next few decades, on the last day, what's the legacy you hope to leave behind?
The legacy I hope to leave behind is that by leading by example, by living by example, I was able to give others permission to do the same. We're all looking for a role model. We're all looking for somebody, but deep down, we're the only person that can give ourselves permission. So my legacy would be fulfilled if I was just able to do that. But it starts with us. I'm not going to find it outside of us. right? It starts with our internal choice. So that would be it.
Yes, it does. I love that because you've done that for yourself. You gave yourself permission to create the life you have now. You know, you uprooted it all, and you're inspiring the world for the content you're creating. So thank you for everything that you're doing, for the journey you're on, for having the courage to do what you did those years ago, because you know the people that have been impacted. And I had a conversation with Philip McKernan on the podcast a few months back, and we were talking, and his message is so strongly grounded in the fact that this journey is bigger than you. It's not about you, and that's why we connected so well, because that's why I do what I do now. And I've told my listeners many times before, like this was last year when I first started the podcast. I had a sales job, like really hardcore recruitment sales job, and it was like Wolf of Wall Street. Basically, I was in that sort of environment for very long hours during the day, and then I come back, and it's like the podcast is one thing that pumps me up. But I'm hitting record at 10 p.m., finishing at 11 p.m. How do you get yourself pumped up at that time? And then I'm networking till like 12, 1 o'clock, and then going to sleep, waking up at 5:30. And it's like, I could only do that because I felt like it was bigger than me. I wasn't making any money. And it's like, I'm just doing it because I feel this is where I'm supposed to be. I'm doing what I need to do, you know, and that's what fueled me. And it still does to this day, because like episode 1, go back and watch it. I look like shit. I sound like shit. I'm stuttering. I don't know what I'm saying. But because I wanted to get myself out there, it wasn't about me. If you make it about yourself, and if you made it about yourself, you wouldn't have uprooted your life because you felt like there was something bigger calling you, and you've impacted millions. So thank you for doing everything you've done. And I wish you all the best on the rest of your journey.
Right back to you, man. You're an example and a great shepherd of living the message, living your legacy, and having the courage to step into it, man. So thank you.
Bro, if people want to find out more about you, follow you, and just check out, you know, more about everything that you just said, where's the best place for them to do that?
Absolutely. Well, if any of this connected, all of this type of material is going to be my upcoming book. It's called The Leap of Your Life. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can go to leapofyourlife.com. It's already out for pre-order. So if this connected with you, that's the best place.
Awesome, man. Well, definitely looking forward to getting episode 2 in, and we'll probably possibly even do that at Thrive if you're going to be there. Because
it would be awesome. Yeah, dude, totally.
Yeah. We'll bring all the equipment, and we'll get one set up down there.
You got to crush your workout too.
Yeah, most definitely, man. All right, well, I'll see you. I'll speak to you soon.
Awesome.